Let me offer you a simple bet. We flip a coin. If it lands tails, you lose $100. If it lands heads, you win. How much would that number have to be for you to actually take the bet? Think about it honestly. Most people won't say $101, even though on paper, that's a winning bet. They won't even say $150. For most people, the number is around $200 or more, which is strange, isn't it? To risk losing 100, you demand the chance to win 200. You need the possible gain to be twice the size of the possible loss before it even feels worth it. That gap, that little times 2 hiding in your gut, is one of the most powerful forces in your entire financial life. It has a name, it earned someone a Nobel Prize, and it is quietly, invisibly working to keep you poor. And here's the part that makes it truly strange. This exact glitch in your brain, the one sabotaging your money right now, was once the single most important thing keeping your ancestors alive. So let's figure out what it is, why it's so hard to beat, and how the wealthy quietly work around it. Because once you can see it, you can never unsee it, and it changes how you handle money for the rest of your life. Let's start with the discovery itself, because it broke economics in half. For most of modern history, economists assumed people were rational about money. A dollar gained and a dollar lost were simply equal, and opposite. One felt exactly as good as the other, felt bad, clean, logical, and completely wrong. In 1979, 2 psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, proved it. They showed that in the human mind, losses and gains are not weighed on the same scale at all. Losing something hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. They summed it up in one line that has echoed through psychology ever since. Losses loom larger than gains. This idea was so profound that it eventually won Kahneman the Nobel Prize in Economics, a prize for psychology work so important it rewrote the rules of money itself. So that's the glitch, in a sentence. The pain of losing $100 is about twice as intense as the joy of finding one. But naming it is the easy part. The real question is why. And that's where this gets uncomfortable and personal. Because you probably have a story you tell yourself about your money mistakes, that you're just not disciplined enough, not smart enough with numbers, bad with money, the way some people are bad with directions. Here's the first thing you need to understand. That story is mostly wrong. This wiring isn't a personal failing. It isn't a lack of willpower or intelligence. It's standard issue human hardware, the same in a factory worker and a hedge fund manager and a Nobel-winning economist. In fact, Kahneman himself admitted that discovering this glitch didn't make him immune to it. He spent his whole life studying it, and he still felt it every time. This isn't a you problem, it's a human problem, and that changes everything about how you have to fight it. But it raises an even deeper question. If this instinct is so costly, if it's quietly wrecking financial decisions across the entire species, then why do we have it at all? Why would evolution build something so seemingly broken into every single one of us? Hold that question, because the answer is the key to the whole thing. And to get there, we first have to see just how irrational this glitch can make you. Kahneman and Tversky ran an experiment that exposes it perfectly. They offered people a choice. Take a guaranteed $3,000 or gamble on an 80% chance of winning $4,000. Now, the gamble is technically worth more, but most people don't care. Around 80% grab the safe, guaranteed money. Perfectly sensible. We play it safe to protect a gain. But then they flipped it. Now the choice was, accept a guaranteed loss of $3,000 or gamble on an 80% chance of losing $4,000 with a slim chance of losing nothing. Suddenly, people transformed. Faced with a certain loss, around 92% of them took the gamble even though, mathematically, it was the worst choice, risking a bigger loss. Look at what just happened. Same people, same math, opposite behavior. When there was a gain to protect, they were careful. But when there was a loss to avoid, they suddenly became reckless gamblers, willing to risk more just for a chance to escape the pain of losing. Remember that, because it's the trap inside the trap, and we're coming back to it. So now, back to the big question. Why would we be built this way? And here's the second surprise, because this glitch was never a flaw at all. It was a masterpiece. Rewind 50,000 years, and imagine you're not an investor. You're trying to survive. In that world, a gain and a loss were not remotely equal. Find some extra food on a good day? Pleasant, but not life-changing. Lose your food, your shelter, your footing on a cliff edge. That single loss could end you permanently. For a creature trying to survive, avoiding catastrophic loss was far more important than chasing a marginal gain. The ancestors who felt losses intensely, who treated every threat as urgent and every loss as a disaster to be avoided at all costs, those were the ones careful enough to live long enough to become your ancestors. The ones who shrugged off losses got weeded out. So you didn't inherit a broken brain. You inherited a survival machine, exquisitely tuned to protect you from loss. Because for almost all of human history, a loss could kill you. The glitch isn't that the wiring is bad. The glitch is that it's running in the wrong world. That same ancient alarm designed for lions and famine now fires when it sees a red number in a brokerage app, and it is just as loud, just as urgent, and just as convinced that you are about to die. And that misfiring alarm is now sabotaging your money in ways you don't even notice. Let me show you where it's costing you, because you'll recognize every one of these. Start with the way people handle investments. Loss aversion makes you do something so consistent that economists gave it a name, the disposition effect. You sell your winners far too early, because locking in a gain feels safe and wonderful, and you hold your losers far too long, because selling them would force you to admit the loss is real. So you do the exact opposite of the rule everyone claims to know. Instead of letting winners run and cutting losers, you cut your winners and marry your losers quietly, guaranteeing worse returns, all to protect your feelings. We saw this force at its most destructive in a market crash. Remember how the real danger in a downturn was never the crash itself, but the overwhelming urge to sell at the bottom? This is the wiring behind that urge. The crash triggers the 50,000-year-old alarm, screaming that this loss will destroy you, and it drives people to sell in a panic, right at the moment holding on matters most. But loss aversion doesn't just wreck the investments you have. Its cruelest trick is stopping people from ever investing at all. For millions of people, the fear of watching their money drop even temporarily is so intense that they keep everything in cash, where it feels safe. And here's the bitter irony. By desperately avoiding the small, temporary, imaginary loss of market dips, they lock in a real, permanent, guaranteed loss instead, because inflation quietly eats that safe cash every single year. The glitch is so afraid of a paper cut that it lets you slowly bleed out. And then there's the trap of throwing good money after bad. It's why someone keeps pouring cash into a failing business, or a car that breaks down every month, or a doomed investment, because walking away means accepting the money already spent is gone. So to avoid admitting one loss, they create a bigger one. The pain of the loss is so strong it makes people irrational in every direction. Which brings us back to that trap inside the trap, the one I told you to remember. Because you might assume loss aversion simply makes you too cautious. But that experiment showed us the opposite is just as true. When you're staring at a loss, the same wiring makes you dangerously reckless. It's why people double down on a losing bet, why they hold a crashing stock and whisper, "It'll come back," why gamblers chase their losses deeper into the hole. This glitch doesn't just make you too timid to build wealth. It also makes you reckless enough to destroy it. It really does get you both ways. Now, before we get to what actually works, I have to be honest with you because the popular version of this idea oversimplifies it, and you deserve the real picture. First, that clean losses hurt exactly twice as much. Figure the famous coefficient of around 2.25, you should hold it loosely. The most recent and thorough research suggests that number is probably too high, and that how strongly you feel losses varies a lot from person to person and depends heavily on the situation. The direction is rock solid. Losses really do loom larger than gains across cultures and decades of studies. But the exact times too is a rule of thumb, not a law of physics. Second, and this matters, loss aversion is not simply a disease to be cured. That same instinct that makes you too cautious is also what stops you from betting your rent money on a coin flip or gambling your savings on a wild tip. It protects you from catastrophe. The goal was never to feel nothing when you lose. A person who felt no fear of loss at all wouldn't be a genius investor, they'd be bankrupt. This isn't about deleting the instinct, it's about keeping it from running the show. And third, the hardest truth of all, you cannot simply turn this off. You cannot logic your way out of a reflex that's older than language. Even the man who won a Nobel Prize for discovering it said he never stopped feeling its pull. So if willpower doesn't work, and awareness alone isn't enough, what does? Here is the answer, and it's the quiet secret running underneath everything we've ever talked about on this channel. The people who beat this glitch don't do it by feeling differently. They do it by building systems that never give the glitch a chance to react in the first place. Think about what that actually looks like. Why does automatic investing work so well? Because you never see the money arrive, so it never feels like a loss to invest it. The alarm never even wakes up. Why do the wealthiest, calmest investors often barely look at their portfolios? Because a loss you never see can't trigger a panic you can't control. Why does reframing a crash as a sale instead of a loss change everything? Because you're feeding the same event to your brain in a language that doesn't set off the alarm. Why does zooming out to a decade-long view calm people down? Because from far enough away, the terrifying losses shrink into a tiny wobble on a line that goes up. Do you see the pattern? Not one of those things fixes your brain. Every single one of them simply routes around it. They are cages built for a 50,000-year-old animal, designed so that its panic can't reach the steering wheel. Because that's the real truth about the glitch that keeps you poor. You will never delete it. It will be there for the rest of your life, whispering at every dip, every downturn, every chance to walk away from a loss as loud and as certain as it was on the day one of your ancestors used it to run from something with teeth. The wealthy aren't the people who silence that voice. No one can. They're simply the people who stopped letting it drive, who learned that the panic they feel watching their money dip isn't wisdom and isn't news, it's just an ancient reflex, firing in the wrong century. And the moment you can see it for what it is, you get to make the one choice your ancestors never could. You get to feel the fear and not obey it. Next time on this channel, we're going to look at the opposite force, not the fear of losing, but the hunger for more. The strange reason that no matter how much money you make, it never quite feels like enough, and the hidden mechanism that keeps moving the finish line just as you reach it.